My name is Richard. I am 67 years old, and I spent my whole life working as a carpenter. With my own hands, I built the very house I live in today. Every nail, every wooden beam carries my sweat and my dreams. I always thought that when I grew older, this house would remain in the family, a safe place for my daughter, for my grandchildren, and for me until my last breath. When my daughter Emily introduced me to her fiancé, I was happy at first. His name was Mark. He was polite, well-dressed, and seemed to treat her with respect. But something inside me, maybe a father's instinct, told me that his smile was too perfect, too rehearsed. Still, I wanted my daughter to be happy, so I stayed quiet. The wedding was grand. Mark's family insisted on a big celebration, even though I suggested something small. I paid for most of it because I wanted Emily's day to be beautiful. After all, I only have one daughter. But soon after the wedding, things started to feel strange. Mark began visiting me more often, but not with kindness. Instead of asking me about my health, he asked me about my house. "Richard, do you have the deed to the house somewhere safe?" he once asked. "Of course," I replied. "Why?" "Oh, nothing," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I should have paid more attention, but I didn't. Then one morning, just a week after the wedding, I heard a knock on my door. I opened it and saw Mark standing there, not with Emily, but with a man in a suit holding a folder. Mark looked at me confidently and said, "Richard, we just sold this house. You're moving to a retirement home. This notary is here to finalize the papers." For a moment, my heart stopped. My own son-in-law, the man who swore to love my daughter, was standing in front of me, trying to take away the very roof over my head. But I didn't panic. I looked at him calmly and said, "Great, let's go to the police station first. They are very interested in people who try to steal homes from the elderly." The notary's face went pale. Mark's confident smile disappeared. He didn't expect me to be prepared. What he didn't know was that I had already spoken with my lawyer weeks earlier, when I first felt uneasy about him. Every document was safe, and my house was protected. That was the day I realized something. Family is not always blood. Sometimes the ones closest to you are the ones who can betray you the most.
Mark stood frozen at my doorstep, his confidence shattered. The notary quickly excused himself, muttering something about coming back later before rushing to his car. That left Mark standing there, his face red with anger. "Richard," he said through clenched teeth, "you're making a big mistake. You can't fight me. Emily is my wife now, and that means this house will eventually be ours." I stared at him with steady eyes and replied, "You married my daughter, not my house. And if you think you can bully me, you're going to learn the hard way." That evening, I called Emily to talk. My daughter sounded confused and upset. She said Mark had told her that I wanted to move to a retirement home, that it was all part of my plan. My heart broke when I realized she believed him. Mark had been poisoning her mind against me. But I didn't argue with her on the phone. Instead, I invited her over for dinner. When she came, I showed her the legal documents I had prepared months ago, documents that clearly stated the house was under a trust, locked and protected, with her name on it for the future, but never for Mark. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, he told me you hated me, that you wanted to sell the house before I could inherit it." I shook my head. "Sweetheart, I built this home for you, not for a greedy man who wants to control everything." That night, Emily finally saw the truth. She confronted Mark when she went home, and he exploded in rage. He shouted, he threw things, and worst of all, he threatened her. That was the final straw. Emily called me, her voice shaking, and said, "Dad, I can't stay here anymore. Can I come back home?" I opened my door wide for her. "You'll always have a place here," I told her. But Mark didn't give up. He showed up again, this time with two men I had never seen before, big, intimidating men who stood behind him like bodyguards. Mark pointed at me and shouted, "This is my house, old man. Sign it over or you'll regret it." I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled out my phone and pressed a button. Within minutes, 2 police cars pulled up in front of my driveway. You see, I had already informed the authorities about his threats. The officers arrested the 2 men immediately. Mark tried to act innocent, but when Emily showed the police the threatening text messages he had sent her, there was no way out for him. He was handcuffed right there in front of my house. That night, as I sat with Emily, I realized how close I had come to losing not just my home, but also my daughter. Mark had married her for greed, but his mask had fallen off too soon. And I promised myself one thing. I would never let anyone take advantage of me or my family again.
The night Mark was arrested, Emily sat quietly in the living room, staring at the floor. She was shaking, not from fear anymore, but from disappointment. "Dad," she whispered, "how could I have been so blind? He tricked me, lied to me, used me." I put my hand on hers and said gently, "Sweetheart, love can make us blind. It's not your fault. What matters now is that you're safe." The next weeks were not easy. Mark's lawyer tried to get him released on bail, but the evidence was stacked against him. The threatening messages, the forged documents the notary had brought, and even testimonies from neighbors who had seen the suspicious men outside my house, all of it painted a clear picture. Mark wasn't just greedy, he was dangerous. The court case dragged on for months. Emily had to testify, and it broke my heart to see her stand in front of a judge, her voice trembling as she explained how her own husband tried to steal everything from her family. But she was brave. For the first time, I saw my little girl as a strong woman. Mark was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud, intimidation, and attempted property theft. The notary, who had been part of the scheme, lost his license and faced charges too. When the judge read the final sentence, Emily held my hand and whispered, "It's over." But healing takes time. At first, Emily cried every night. She said she felt like a fool for marrying him. I reminded her, "No, you are not a fool. He was just a master manipulator. But you've escaped him now, and that makes you stronger than ever." Slowly, life returned to normal. Emily moved back into the house with me, and together we fixed the broken pieces, both of the home and of our hearts. I taught her how to repair the old wooden fences, how to sand the porch, how to make the house stronger. It was symbolic, in a way. We were rebuilding not just the home, but also trust and love. One evening, as the sun set, Emily hugged me and said, "Dad, this house is more than just walls and a roof. It's our story, and no one can ever take that away from us again." I smiled and replied, "Exactly, sweetheart. A house built with love can never be stolen." And from that day on, we lived not in fear, but in peace, knowing that we had faced betrayal, fought back, and won together. After Mark was sentenced, life seemed calmer, but peace doesn't return overnight. Emily struggled with trust. She avoided friends, felt ashamed of the failed marriage, and often asked me, "Dad, what will people say?" I told her, "People will always talk, Emily. What matters is what you say to yourself. You stood up against a liar. That makes you strong." Still, the shadow of betrayal lingered. One afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from Mark, sent from prison. Emily was terrified to open it, but I encouraged her to read it. Sometimes facing the darkness helps you move on. The letter was full of excuses. Mark claimed he did it all for their future, that he only wanted security. He begged her to wait for him until his release. Emily's hands shook as she tore the letter into pieces. "Never again," she said firmly. That was the turning point. She decided to return to her old passion, teaching music. Emily had given up her career when she married Mark, because he wanted her at home, under his control. Now she enrolled again at a local school as a piano teacher. The first day she came home with a smile, I knew my daughter was coming back to life. Meanwhile, I spent my days fixing the garden. My roses, which had been neglected during all the chaos, started to bloom again. Neighbors often stopped by, curious about the police cars they had seen months earlier. I didn't share all the details, but I always said the same thing. Never let greed walk into your home. Guard your family like your treasure. One neighbor, Mr. Wilson, shook his head and said, "Richard, you're a lucky man. Many people your age lose everything to fraud. You stood your ground." But I didn't feel lucky. I felt tested, and I knew more challenges might come. A few months later, Emily and I received another shock. Mark's brother, a slick businessman named Daniel, showed up at our doorstep. He carried himself with the same fake charm that Mark once did. "Richard," he said smoothly, "I'm not like my brother, but he told me about this house. He said he always wanted to renovate it, make it worth double. If you'd like, I could invest in it, help you modernize it. All you'd need to do is sign some papers." I laughed coldly. "Daniel, do you think I was born yesterday? Get off my property before I call the police again." Daniel's smile disappeared instantly. He muttered, "You'll regret this," before walking away. That night, Emily was shaken. "Dad, what if his family keeps bothering us? What if they won't stop?" I put my arm around her and said, "Then we'll keep fighting. But remember this house is not just bricks and wood. It's our shield. And as long as we stand together, no one can break us."
Daniel didn't disappear so easily. A week later, strange things began happening around the house. One evening, the mailbox was ripped off its post. Another night, someone smashed one of the garden lights. Emily grew nervous. "Dad, what if Daniel is trying to scare us?" I sighed. "That's exactly what he's doing. He wants us to feel unsafe, so we'll give up the house. But we won't." I installed security cameras around the property. Every corner of the house was now under watch. Emily helped me set them up, and for the first time, she said with determination, "I won't let them win, Dad. Not again." A few days later, the cameras caught footage of Daniel lurking near the fence at night. I took the recording straight to the police. The officers recognized him immediately. Apparently, Daniel had been involved in shady real estate scams before. The police warned him to stay away, but men like Daniel don't scare easily. Instead of stopping, he became bolder. One afternoon, Emily and I returned home to find our front door wide open. Inside, drawers were pulled out, papers scattered everywhere. Nothing valuable was stolen, but it was clear. Someone had searched for documents. Emily was shaking. "Dad, what if they find a way to trick the law? What if they take the house from us?" I held her shoulders and said, "Emily, the house is legally protected. They can't touch it. All they can do is try to frighten us. But we won't live in fear." Still, I knew we had to be smart. I reached out to my lawyer again, and we arranged a restraining order against Daniel. The lawyer also suggested I speak to a local journalist who had written about fraud cases targeting the elderly. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want our private life in the newspaper. But then I realized the more people knew, the safer we would be. When the article came out, the headline read, "Family Greed. Elderly man and daughter defend their home against fraud." The story spread quickly in our town. Suddenly, neighbors, church members, even strangers began offering support. Some shared their own experiences of betrayal. Others promised to keep watch over our home. Emily cried when she saw how many people stood by us. "Dad, for so long I felt alone, but now I see we're not alone at all." Daniel, on the other hand, hated the attention. His reputation in town began to crumble. Business partners pulled away, people whispered when he walked by, and for the first time,
I saw fear in his eyes instead of arrogance. But men like Daniel don't give up easily, and I had a strong feeling his next move would be the most dangerous yet. Weeks passed, and the tension never fully left our home. Emily tried to return to normal life, teaching music and spending afternoons in the garden, but the shadow of Daniel's threats lingered. Every unexpected knock at the door made her flinch. Every car slowing down in front of the house made her heart race. One evening, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street. I knew immediately. Daniel had escalated. He wasn't just trying to scare us anymore. He was planning something bigger. I told Emily, "Stay inside. Don't answer the door. Call me if you see anything unusual." She nodded, gripping the phone like a lifeline. I went outside, careful not to draw attention, and took pictures of the SUV. Then I called the police, giving them the exact location and description. Within minutes, patrol cars arrived, surrounding the area. Daniel's men, if he had any, would think twice now. But Daniel was cunning. The next day we received a package at the door, unmarked with no return address. Emily hesitated, then slowly opened it. Inside was a letter, typed neatly, coldly. "This is only the beginning. Give up the house, or the next time someone you love will pay the price." Emily's hands shook. "Dad? He's serious. This isn't just threats anymore." I took the letter, reading every word carefully. Then I calmly said, "Emily, that's exactly why we stay together. Fear only works if we let it. We won't let him control us. Not now, not ever." The next morning, I installed reinforced locks and additional cameras. I even spoke with a security consultant, making a detailed plan for any possible intrusion. Emily watched silently, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. Finally, she whispered, "I won't run away. I'll face this, with you." That night, we sat together in the living room, the house quiet but tense. I realized something important. Mark and Daniel weren't just after property. They wanted power, control over our lives, over Emily, over me. But the more they tried, the stronger we became. I looked at my daughter and said, "This house is more than just wood and bricks. It's our courage, our memories, and our love. And no one can take that from us as long as we stand together." Suddenly, a knock at the door startled us. Emily froze. I motioned for her to stay back, while I opened it. Outside stood a man in a suit, holding a badge. He introduced himself as a detective who had been following Daniel's other fraudulent schemes. "Mr. Richard, Miss Emily, we've been watching your situation closely. It's clear Daniel is escalating. We're here to ensure you're protected and that any threats are investigated fully." Relief washed over us. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small spark of hope. The law was on our side, and the community had our back. Emily hugged me tightly. "Dad, I'm scared, but I feel safer now. Thank you for never giving up." I held her close, feeling the weight of the past months pressing down, but also the strength we had gained. I knew the battle wasn't completely over. Daniel might try again, but one thing was certain: we were ready. We had learned that fear can be faced, betrayal can be fought, and a house built with love is stronger than any greed. And that night, as I looked around the home I had built with my own hands, I realized the walls didn't just protect us from the outside, they protected the bond between me and my daughter, the trust we had rebuilt, and the courage that no money or threat could ever break.
The following week, life seemed to settle, at least on the surface. Emily returned to teaching, and I spent my mornings in the workshop, fixing old furniture and sanding the porch. But deep down, I knew Daniel was not done. His greed had no limit, and he would not give up so easily. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a strange car appeared at the end of our street. Emily noticed it first. "Dad, that looks familiar," she whispered. My stomach sank. I recognized the license plate from the SUV that had stalked us before. Daniel was watching us again. I took a deep breath and told Emily, "Stay calm. We know he's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. I called the detective immediately, explaining the situation. The officer assured us that patrols would be increased and promised immediate response if the car moved closer. That night, sleep was difficult. Emily stayed by my side, clutching a blanket tightly. But I noticed a change in her demeanor. The fear was still there, but it had been replaced with resolve. She was no longer the timid girl who had married Mark. She was learning to be strong, to stand firm against those who sought to harm her. The next day, we discovered another attempt. Someone had tried to tamper with the garden gate. It was clear Daniel had crossed the line. This was no longer just intimidation. But I refused to panic. I reinforced the locks, upgraded the alarm system, and even installed motion sensors around the property. Every possible angle was now under watch. Emily helped me with the cameras, checking every feed carefully. She said with determination, "Dad, we're ready for him. We won't let him scare us." I nodded, proud of her courage. Then an unexpected twist arrived. The detective called with news. Daniel had been caught trying to pressure a real estate agent in a neighboring town to forge documents for another home. It was a small victory, but it meant that his attention might be divided, giving us some breathing room. I looked at Emily and said, "See, sometimes patience and preparation are stronger than fear. We've made our stand, and now the law is finally catching up with him." That night, for the first time in weeks, we sat down for dinner without tension pressing down on us. Emily smiled faintly and said, "Dad, it feels like we're finally getting our life back." I smiled, but I knew the battle had taught us a valuable lesson. Trust must be earned. Greed will always try to find a way in, but courage and preparation can protect what truly matters. As the lights dimmed and the house grew quiet, I reflected on the journey. From Mark's betrayal to Daniel's relentless attempts, we had faced fear, threats, and lies. But through it all, Emily and I had remained united, and in that unity, we discovered something stronger than any threat: the unbreakable bond of family built not just by blood, but by love, trust, and resilience.
Days turned into weeks, and though Daniel's schemes were being uncovered, the tension never fully left our home. Emily and I became more vigilant. Every knock, every unexpected sound now made us pause and assess. But unlike before, we were no longer paralyzed by fear. We had learned to anticipate, to prepare, and to act. One evening, as Emily played the piano in the living room, the music felt like a shield, a barrier between us and the outside world. I watched her fingers dance over the keys, remembering how fragile she had once been. Now she was strong, stronger than I could have imagined. But the shadow of Daniel's threats still loomed. Suddenly, the phone rang. I recognized the number. The detective. "Mr. Richard, we have information," he said. "Daniel is planning another move. He's not stopping. And he's thinking bigger this time. You need to be ready." I hung up and turned to Emily. "He's planning something, Emily. We don't know what yet, but we will face it, just like before. Together." She nodded, her jaw set with determination. That night, I walked around the property, checking every camera, every sensor, every lock. Emily joined me outside, carrying a flashlight. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm scared. But I also know we can do this. We survived before. We can survive again." I smiled and squeezed her hand. "Exactly, Emily. Fear will always try to visit us. But courage lives here, in this house, with us." The following morning, a small package arrived at our door. Inside, we found a note. "You think you're safe, but I always have another plan." No signature, no name, just a threat. Emily's hands trembled as she read it. I took the paper and calmly said, "This is just words. Words cannot take our home, our family, or our courage. Let's make a plan.
We'll notify the detective, document everything, and keep watch. Fear only has power if we let it. Over the next days, we coordinated with the police, neighbors, and even a local journalist who had written about our story. Cameras were monitored 24/7, patrols increased, and every suspicious movement was reported immediately. Emily's confidence grew with each small victory. She said, "Dad, I feel like I'm finally fighting back, not just hiding." One evening, while checking the footage, I noticed a figure lurking near the back gate. I quickly alerted the police. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived, and the man fled. Emily and I watched the footage, realizing that Daniel's intimidation tactics were growing more desperate. I turned to Emily and said, "This is a battle of wits now. He's losing patience, and impatience makes people sloppy. We will use that against him. Stay calm, stay vigilant, and never face him alone. That's our strength." Emily nodded. For the first time, there was no fear in her eyes, only resolve. And I knew, no matter what Daniel tried next, we were ready. We had survived betrayal, threats, and lies. We had each other. And together, we could face anything.
A few days later, an unsettling quiet fell over the neighborhood. The kind of quiet that makes your senses sharper and your instincts sharper still. Emily and I kept to our routines, but neither of us relaxed. Every glance out the window, every car passing by, felt like a test of patience and nerves. Then, late one night, I heard a faint sound, a scraping near the back fence. I motioned for Emily to stay inside and grabbed my flashlight. Outside, shadows danced in the yard. I saw 2 figures trying to climb the fence. My heart raced, but my hands were steady. I called the police immediately, giving them a precise description. Within minutes, sirens pierced the night, and the intruders fled before being caught. Emily joined me outside, her face pale but determined. "Dad, they won't stop, will they?" she asked. I shook my head slowly. "No, Emily, but every time they try, they show weakness. They're desperate. That's when we have the advantage." The next day, the detective arrived at our door with new information. "Richard, Emily," he said, "we traced the intruders. They were hired by Daniel. He's trying to scare you into giving up the house. But the good news is we now have evidence to strengthen your case. Every threat, every intrusion, every letter, it's all documented." Emily's eyes lit up. "So, we're not just defending ourselves, we're building a case against him?" I nodded. "Exactly. Fear is temporary, Emily, but proof is permanent. And the law is on our side." That afternoon, we held a small meeting at home. I explained to Emily how we would continue monitoring the property, record every suspicious activity, and keep in close contact with the detective. She listened intently, taking notes, asking questions. For the first time, I realized she was no longer just my daughter in need of protection. She was my partner in defending everything we had built. Later that evening, as we sat in the living room, Emily looked at me and said, "Dad, I've learned something. Fear doesn't just weaken you. It can also make you stronger if you face it right." I smiled, proud. "That's right, Emily. And you've proven it. No one, not Mark, not Daniel, can take that from us." But I knew in my heart that Daniel was growing more reckless. He had tried intimidation, threats, and now even hired men to force us into submission. And deep down, I felt a chill. His next move would be the most dangerous yet.
A week later, a chilling message arrived in the mail. This time, not just words, but a photo of our house, taken at night. Someone had been watching us closely. Emily held the envelope tightly, her knuckles white. "Dad, they're inside our lives, everywhere we go," she whispered. I took a deep breath and said, "Yes, Emily, but we've prepared for this. Fear doesn't control us anymore. We do." We immediately contacted the detective. Within hours, additional patrols were scheduled, and he suggested we hire a temporary security guard to patrol the property at night. Emily agreed, though I noticed her hesitation. She hated feeling like we were prisoners in her own home. I reassured her. This is temporary, Emily. Safety first, courage second. Together, we have both. Over the next few days, Daniel's moves became bolder. One morning, we found our garden gate bent again, with muddy footprints leading away from it. Emily was shaken, but I remained calm. Emily, I said, they want us to panic. But panic isn't part of our plan. We observe, record, and respond. Emily picked up the camera feeds and replayed every suspicious activity. She began noticing patterns, the times Daniel's men appeared, the routes they took, even small details about the black SUV. Her sharp observation impressed me. Emily, I said, you're becoming the strongest part of this team. You notice everything, and that makes you unstoppable. That evening, the security guard reported something unusual. A car parked a block away, with tinted windows and no license plate visible. I knew immediately it was Daniel again. I called the detective, giving him the exact location. The police moved quickly, surrounding the area. Daniel's men attempted to flee, but the officer's presence forced them back. Emily looked at me with wide eyes. Dad, we actually caught them in the act. I nodded. Not just that, Emily. Every attempt they make strengthens our position legally. Every threat, every intrusion is now on record. We're turning their fear tactics into proof. Later that night, as Emily played the piano again, the music felt like a shield, a barrier against Daniel's greed and threats. She looked at me and said, Dad, I feel powerful, not because of what we've built, but because of what we've survived. I smiled, realizing she was right. The house wasn't just a structure, it was a testament to our resilience. And now, more than ever, I knew we were prepared for whatever Daniel tried next. His greed and recklessness could push him, but we were ready, together, fearless, and unwavering.
A few days later, Daniel's desperation became more obvious. Early in the morning, a neighbor called, saying they had seen a strange van parked near our house, with men carrying large, suspicious-looking bags. Emily and I froze for a moment. Then I said firmly, "This is why preparation matters. Stay inside, Emily, and don't answer the door." I grabbed my flashlight and went outside to observe. The men were attempting to enter the property from the back. I called the police immediately, giving them the details. Emily watched from the window, her hands trembling slightly, but there was determination in her eyes. "Dad, we're ready for them," she said quietly. Within minutes, sirens filled the street. The intruders scattered, but one man was caught. The police identified him as a known associate of Daniel. It was a turning point. We had evidence of attempted forced entry, intimidation, and organized harassment. Daniel's network was unraveling. Later that afternoon, the detective visited with new information. "Richard, Emily, Daniel is panicking. He knows the law is closing in and his associates are being arrested. He might try one last desperate move." Emily looked at me, fear mingled with resolve. "Dad, what if he comes himself?" I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll face him, just like we faced everything else, calmly, prepared, and together. Remember, Emily, courage doesn't mean not being afraid. It means acting even when you are." That evening, I set up additional precautions, reinforced locks, motion sensors, and hidden cameras around the perimeter. Emily helped me double-check every corner. "I won't let him scare us, Dad. Not this time," she said firmly. As night fell, we sat together in the living room. The house was quiet, but the tension was palpable. Emily whispered, "Dad, I feel like this could be it, the final confrontation." I nodded slowly. "It could be, but we are ready. Whatever happens, we face it together. This house is more than wood and nails. It's our strength, our courage, and our bond." Hours later, as the wind rustled outside, I noticed headlights approaching the driveway. My heart beat faster, but I remained calm. Emily was by my side, clutching the phone and ready to call for help. And in that moment, I realized something important. No matter how greedy,
reckless or dangerous someone is, they can never break the bond we have between family, home, and trust.
The headlights lingered at the end of the driveway. I peeked through the window and saw a familiar black SUV. My stomach tightened. Daniel had come himself. I motioned for Emily to stay calm and inside. "Emily, stay back. Watch and observe. Don't confront him," I said. I grabbed my phone and quietly dialed the detective. "He's here," I whispered. "We need immediate backup." Within minutes, patrol cars arrived, their sirens muted but lights flashing. Daniel, realizing he was being watched, stepped out of the SUV, his face a mix of anger and frustration. Emily watched from behind the curtain, her eyes wide but resolute. "Dad, he looks dangerous," she whispered. I nodded. "Yes, Emily, but danger isn't victory. Preparation and patience are stronger." Daniel tried to approach the front door, shouting threats and waving his fists. I stayed behind the safety of the door and called out, "Daniel, step back! Police are here, and this ends now." His fury boiled over, but the arrival of officers kept him at bay. The detective stepped forward. "Daniel, you are under investigation for harassment, attempted burglary, and threats. Any further action will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Daniel's face turned red with rage. He attempted to argue, to intimidate, but the officers remained firm, calmly restraining him. Emily finally stepped out, holding her father's hand. "Dad, we did it. Together," she said, her voice trembling but full of pride. I hugged her tightly. "Yes, Emily. Together. Nothing can break us now." Daniel was escorted to a police car, shouting and swearing, but we knew his power over us was gone. He had tried greed, deception, intimidation, and fear, but in the end, courage, preparation, and family loyalty had won. That night, the house felt peaceful in a way it hadn't for months. Emily and I sat together in the living room, surrounded by the home we had built, defended, and protected. "Dad," she said softly, "I understand now. The house isn't just walls and a roof. It's everything we fought for, everything we survived." I smiled, holding her hand. "Exactly, sweetheart. It's our bond, our memories, our courage, and no one, no matter how desperate or greedy, can ever take that away."
The following morning, the neighborhood seemed calm again. The police had taken Daniel into custody, and for the first time in months, Emily and I could breathe without fear. But the emotional wounds remained. Emily was quiet as she sipped her morning coffee, and I noticed the weight of the past months still pressed on her shoulders. I sat beside her and said, "Emily, it's okay to feel tired, scared, and angry. What matters is what we do next. Healing takes time." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Dad, I feel like I've lost so much of myself, but I want to find it again." We spent the day repairing the house, both literally and metaphorically. Together we mended broken fences, painted walls, and cleaned every corner that had been neglected during the chaos. Each repair felt like reclaiming not just our home, but our sense of safety and control. Emily returned to her piano, playing gently as the sun streamed through the windows. "Dad," she said softly, "I forgot how much music can heal. I want to go back to teaching, to live my life fully again." I smiled proudly. "That's exactly what I want for you, Emily. Life is meant to be lived, not lived in fear." Neighbors stopped by, bringing food, flowers, and kind words. They shared stories of their own struggles, reminding us that we weren't alone. Emily smiled more freely, laughing with the children playing outside. For the first time in months, there was lightness in our home. Evenings became a time for reflection.
Emily and I would sit on the porch watching the sun set behind the trees. "Dad," she said one night, "I understand now. This house isn't just wood and nails. It's our story, our resilience, and our love, and no one can ever take that away." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. "Exactly, Emily. And from now on, we guard it not with fear, but with courage and wisdom. We've faced betrayal, threats, and danger, and we've come out stronger." As night fell and the house grew quiet, I realized something important. The past months had tested us in every way imaginable, but through courage, preparation, and an unbreakable bond between father and daughter, we had reclaimed our home, our lives, and our sense of security. And though challenges might come again someday, Emily and I knew we could face them, together, fearless, and stronger than ever.
Weeks turned into months, and life slowly began to regain a sense of normalcy. Emily returned to teaching music full-time, her students laughing and learning once again. The house, which had been under siege for so long, finally felt like a home again, warm, safe, and alive. Neighbors who had watched our struggle closely began stopping by more often. Some shared meals, others offered small acts of kindness. It was heartwarming to see that our community had our back. Emily smiled one afternoon as little children ran through the yard. "Dad, it feels like life is blooming again," she said, her eyes shining. I nodded, standing by the garden that I had tended so diligently. The roses we had neglected during the chaos were now in full bloom. Every petal, every scent felt like a small victory. "Exactly, Emily. This garden, like our lives, is proof that with care and patience, even after darkness, beauty returns." We also decided to share our story publicly, not just for ourselves, but to warn others. A local news segment featured our journey, the betrayal, the threats, and how we had protected our home. Viewers were moved, leaving messages of support and sharing similar experiences. Emily told me, "Dad, people are learning from what we went through. Our struggle is helping others." Evenings were peaceful now. Emily and I would sit together, listening to her piano or talking quietly. She would occasionally glance at the cameras, a habit formed during the months of threats, and smile. "Dad, we're safe now, truly safe," she said. And I realized she was right, not just physically, but emotionally too. Life had taught us valuable lessons. Trust must be earned. Greed will always lurk. And preparation and courage can protect what truly matters. And most importantly, family isn't just about blood. It's about standing together through betrayal, fear, and hardship to protect the ones you love. As the sun set over our home, I looked at Emily and said, "This house isn't just where we live. It's where we fought, survived, and learned what real strength is. And no matter what happens, as long as we have each other, nothing can break us." Emily hugged me tightly, and in that embrace, I felt the culmination of everything we had endured, a renewed sense of safety, love, and hope. And though life would continue to bring challenges, we were ready to face them, together, stronger than ever.
Months had passed since Daniel was arrested. Life had begun to regain a rhythm, but Emily and I knew that true healing takes time. We spent mornings tending the garden, repairing small imperfections in the house, and afternoons with music, laughter, and quiet reflection. Yet there was a lingering tension, the knowledge that greed and deception still existed in the world. Emily often asked, "Dad, what if someone else tries the same tricks?" I would smile gently. "Then we'll face it, Emily, just like we always have. Stronger, wiser, and together." One evening, as we were reviewing the security footage for fun, we noticed something strange, a figure approaching the house from a distance, moving cautiously. My heart tightened, but I didn't panic. I whispered to Emily, "Stay inside, calm, and watch. This might be a test, or it might just be someone lost."
I stepped outside slowly, flashlight in hand. The figure froze when they saw me. It was a delivery man, lost and apologetic. Relief flooded over me, and Emily laughed softly from the window. "See, Dad, sometimes fear tricks us more than reality does," she said. That night, we sat together in the living room. Emily said, "Dad, I've learned something important. The house is more than a home. It's our courage, our history, and the proof that we can survive anything. But I've also learned that real strength is in facing fear, not avoiding it." I nodded, holding her hand. "Exactly, Emily. And now, after everything, we can finally live without looking over our shoulders, but we remain vigilant, because life tests us in many ways. What matters is how we respond." Over the following weeks, our community continued to show support. Neighbors checked in, children played safely in the yard, and the quiet of normal life returned. Emily's students performed a small recital in our living room, filling the house with music and joy. It was a reminder that even after betrayal and danger, life could be beautiful again. That night, as Emily and I stood on the porch watching the sunset, I realized that this house, the house I had built with my own hands, had become more than walls and beams. It had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and family. I said softly, "Emily, we've faced greed, threats, and fear, and we're still standing, stronger than ever." Emily leaned against me and whispered, "Dad, no one can take this from us. Ever." I smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace. For the first time in months, the house felt like a sanctuary, a place of victory, healing, and hope.
One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, a familiar shadow appeared at the edge of the property. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be Daniel attempting one last trick? I motioned for Emily to stay calm inside while I cautiously stepped onto the porch. To my relief, it was a police officer coming to deliver an update. "Richard, Emily, Daniel's appeal was denied. He'll remain incarcerated, and any associates trying to harass you will be prosecuted. You are finally safe." Emily let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Dad, it's really over," she whispered. Tears filled her eyes, a mix of relief and gratitude. I pulled her into a hug, feeling the weight of the past month slowly lift. The following weeks were filled with small celebrations of life returning to normal. Emily returned fully to teaching music, laughing with her students. I tended the garden, finally able to enjoy the roses blooming without fear. Neighbors stopped by to share in our joy, offering congratulations and support. One afternoon, Emily said, "Dad, I want to thank you for the house, for standing by me, and for never giving up. I've learned so much from this, about courage, family, and standing up for what's right." I smiled, feeling proud and humbled. "Emily, the lessons are mutual. You've grown stronger than I could have imagined. Together, we've turned fear into strength and betrayal into resilience." That evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, the house felt alive again, not just as a structure, but as a symbol of everything we had endured and overcome. I realized that this home, built with sweat and love, was more than walls and beams. It was courage, family, and hope. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Dad, no one can ever take this from us, ever." I nodded, smiling. "Exactly, sweetheart. And from now on, we live not in fear, but in strength, love, and peace." For the first time in months, the house felt truly ours. The threats were gone, the fear had lifted, and we had reclaimed not only our home, but our lives. Together, Emily and I knew we could face anything as long as we stayed united. And with that, a long chapter of struggle, courage, and resilience came to an end, but the story of our lives, our bond, and our home would continue, stronger than ever.